Today I want to talk about my insights for urban sketching when I think about the element of shapes. As you know, I've covered a few things within the elements of urban sketching. Today we're going to cover shapes. And shape is one of the most exciting and fundamental of all the ingredient of urban sketching. Well, the most basic stuff would be the big three in terms of geometric shapes. Square, triangles, and circles, right? Those are the easy ideas when it comes to shape. You also have the organic lines, such as leaves, and that is also something that we see very often in an urban sketching scenario. You see trees and leaves and all kinds of organic lines around you, and that's what you sketch. Well, the human body is also an organic lines, if you like. But oftentimes in urban sketching, as you can see, it's a combination of geometric shapes as well as organic shapes. And so we have to learn to live with both of them. When we think of geometric, you need to make sure that your hands drawing the geometric shapes of circles, oval, or combination of those things. And then when you're doing organic lines, maybe you want to switch your mind a little bit differently to think in terms of organic shapes and organic lines. I like to think of our knowledge or our library in our head as we draw more and more, as we compile all the various shapes, that it is like basically building a library. So the three insights I want to share with you today, they are dynamic, foreshortening, and size. We'll cover the first one, dynamic. Well, let's talk about what it is not. Now, typically when you're sketching in an urban sketching scenario and you have to put figures in, for example, you put in the head, the torso, the legs, the feet, and then the arms, and you try to make sure that they are proportionally correct in some ways, and that's it, right? But actually, it is rather boring. Because there's no sense of dynamic in it, because all it is just a person standing in a robotic way. So instead, let's look at alternatively someone who is standing dynamically. What does that mean? Well, you'll be sketching this person in a way that has got a bit of movement, a bit of posture, a bit of style, if you like. It's not just standing with legs shoulder apart, like as if it's in a march, in a national parade of some sort. And you actually make it interesting. There's a bit of leaning, and the weight is on one side, and there's some kind of difference in the way the hands are being portrayed, as well as the feet. And usually the person is carrying something or other. Well, likewise, I won't sketch this. You can see that there's a bit of dynamism in the way this man is standing, and when you sketch, you want to capture that bit of dynamism in it as well. Well, another example would be there's two ladies going for a walk, and well, I think a lot of the examples here are human figures, and certainly dynamism can be construed at mostly having to do with human figures. But actually, you can also think of it as building, and I've seen artists portraying a certain dynamism to the shapes of building by slanting it somewhat, or even make it a little bit exciting by foreshortening, which I'm going to come to shortly, and making the subject itself using a bit more of a dynamic shape. You can be creative with that, certainly. But I do think that it applies mostly to figures, and with figures you can add a lot of energy to the sketch, and certainly I always encourage sketches to put in figures, because it certainly brightens up the sketch when you have figures in it. It seems to portray life itself. One of the things you can do is play with lines, play with shapes. So in order to make your figures more dynamic, slant the torso somewhat. Make sure that the legs are not in the same old boring shoulder wide stance as if they are in some kind of a army uniform, but rather, have dynamic sense to it, a sense of movement, as if they are walking, they are running, they are shifting their weight in some form or other. Just basically create a sense of movement to the figures. It's always easier with the figures than, say, a car or a transportation, because you can't quite slant and make your cars go on two wheels. You're not quite doing stunts with a car. It certainly doesn't happen every day on an urban sketching scenario. But a figure, well, if 1 foot is off the ground, that's very common. The person's walking, 1 foot is off the ground. You could basically make interesting, or just play with it, basically. Have your torso and feet and hand, do things, right? And make it interesting. In that sense, it is creating a sense of dynamism to the sketch itself. Okay, the next one I want to talk about is foreshortening. Okay, what is foreshortening? Well, the idea is that the person is having it's on a different plane than, let's say, the hand. The hand is nearer than the figures. The figure is further out. So when you foreshorten something, they are essentially in one piece, but you need to make sure that there is a sense of distance between them. This usually happens when you are on different planes. So let me illustrate this by drawing the planes where you normally would draw a figure, assuming that the person is perpendicular to the plane. You will draw the person like this. And now let me erase the hand and draw the hand coming out into a different plane nearer to the viewer. How would that be? Well, the hand has to be much bigger. And sometimes the hand is so big that it's much bigger than the head itself. And it really depends on the perspective or where you are looking at. So in some way, it is an issue of perspective of the hand coming out, and that hand is on a different plane closer to the audience. So that's foreshortening. If you look at this clock, it's the same thing. There's foreshortening happening. The closer edge is bigger than the further edge. Same thing with this photo where the finger, it's almost covering the face, if you like, and that's the effect of foreshortening. The next insight is really about size, and it has to do with foreshortening, but it deserves a comment of its own. If you look at this photograph, you can see that the kid in front, the kid is much bigger than the figures at the back. The face itself is bigger in size and in terms of size than the figures, the various figures at the back. That's why when you draw shapes, you have to be very conscious of the size. Size matters in urban sketching. If you look at this photograph, it's the same thing. The head of the person in front is way bigger than the one at the back. Same thing in this photograph as well. This also applies to cars. For example, if you look at this car, it is so much bigger than the car at the back. One thing I want you to think about really is this. In urban sketching, always emphasize the differences in shape, and they give you a sense of distance, and you must perhaps even exaggerate a little bit. Exaggerate the size in front, draw it a bit bigger. Exaggerate the size at the back, draw it a bit smaller. So here we are summarizing for the element of shapes. We're going to cover the other elements as well in the next upcoming videos. I hope you've got something out of this video, specifically around the insights of shapes. And that would be the dynamism of shapes, foreshortening of shapes, and finally size matters. Well, I hope you have a good day wherever you are, and stay happy and healthy as well. Bye.